The ballot or the bullet, freedom or death. We gas ourselves up, but we short on breath. Talking about we eating, but who we really cooking. Dreaming about greens, but ain't nobody looking. No land, no acres, no seeds in the ground. When the hunger hits, who's gonna be around? We starving every day, and it just ain't the food. Feeding the hood garbage, got 'em acting a fool. We flossing with rides, stunting with chains, but these bars we spitting just bring more pain. We guilty as hell, preaching all these lies, selling debt to the kids, and we acting surprised. We commercialize the pain, broadcast the grief, tell the youth to hustle, but hide the beef. We glorify the trap, invite them to the flames, just like Reagan brought the crack on planes. Back in the 80s when the streets got soaked, my people, my brothers, all got choked. Reagan said no trades, but we know the deal. He left us in the dirt, man, that shit was real. I was just a shorty watching it unfold, old enough to see how we got sold. War on drugs, but it was war on us. Cops on our necks, no love, no trust. They labeled us thugs, beast on the block, made us kiss the pavement while they cleaned our clock. Prison became business thanks to Reagan's game. Free labor is the truth in America's name. Slavery's dead, man. That's just a word. Read the 13th Amendment, it's still absurd. They lock us in cages, serving time for life. Double digits for wisdom, cutting sharp like a knife. I'm here to say, the chains in the air, it's time we break free, start showing we care. No more flexing for nothing, no more selling out. It's time to rise up. Good morning, 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 good morning. And you already know how we do this, but today, the shift we ain't talking about. That's what we're going to talk about. But before we get into all that, here is Don Tripp, coffee break, and I will be right back right after this.
Yeah. I stubbed my toe coming from hell and back. I carried all my family's baggage with me. Think I hurt my back. I swear I think I heard it crack. I probably need a chiropractor. I learned to speak with animals. I grew up like Kyla Pratt. I learned to speak with animals, but I despise a rat. Actions speak louder than words until you wiretap. Still don't get no sleep. I called a flight and took a power nap. Trying to keep my head above water without a shower cap. Pistol on me, nice and neat. Lord, I'll lay you right to sleep. Once you get your hands dirty, ain't no way to wipe them clean. I'm 40, what a sight to see. Big bro, I know you proud of me. Don't cry over spilled milk. Turn that shit to cottage cheese. And then we turn that to a lot of cheese. Yeah. Turn into a knot of cheese. Hold on, I got a verse I gotta take back. Surprise, it is I, Mr. Way Too Fucking Fly to even remotely know how the ground feel. From here, everything go downhill, snowballing. Me give a dime up, no, darling. These rap cats want no problems, cause I suit up like a coat closet. Oh, sorry, serving these niggas like old Charlies. Stenches on my pistols, I got enough shells for your whole party. Oh, pardon. Pardon me, my wife is a vegan, so enough about beef. She say all them negative vibes, fuck with her chi. Me, I don't know nothing about that. I come from the streets, I don't argue though. Pretty pussy so powerful, I'm a bull, she's a matador. I go charging in it. She take it however, whenever, and don't charge a penny. Plus I got horrible credit, but in the trap my shit so A1. What's a vacation? I never take one. All this work ain't come with no pay stub. Spent so much money on stupid shit. Never been robbed by a groupie bitch. Now I die riding in roof Chris, but it used to be crackers and tuna fish. And Vienna's, no roof overhead, can't find FEMA. No MasterCard, can't buy Visa. No papa present, just a tired killer. Dear mama, it's me again. To make sure you never need a man or need a hand. Trust assured, I'm gonna deliver when Jesus can. Superman ain't got shit on me. This tight ass suit can't fit on me. I'm so fly, I might need a cape. I'm so fly, I might need some wings. The day I fold and or conform, you will then meet a leprechaun. Getting head from a mermaid and riding off on a unicorn. Word to pill. Word to pill. Long little pill.
That was Don Tripp. Coffee break. So yesterday in Minneapolis, the Star Tribune had what's called is a North Star Summit. And one of the things that was talked about is what's the future of the Minnesota Republican Party. And they had former Governor Tim Pawlenty. That was the last time Minnesota had a Republican governor. It's been 20 years. This next election, it'll be 20 years that we've had a Republican GOP governor. And that is, in my eyes, it's been 20 years. That's kind of big in my eyes. We haven't had really a lot of balance. And we sure definitely not have, besides the trifectas, and that's what we really can remember. And we really need, that's something that we really need to have a conversation about. But I want to get into Governor Tim Pawlenty. He was a former. You had Julia Coleman and also Zach Duckworth. And the moderator, whatever you want to, I guess was Rochelle Olson or something like that. But let's get into it.
You're looking at me like you're expecting me to ask a question. So as most of you probably know, Minnesota has a divided legislature. We're very good at sending a combination of Democrats and Republicans to the legislature, but a Republican has not won statewide in Minnesota since 2006, when our esteemed guest, Tim Pawlenty, won his second term. So we're going to talk about, do the Republicans need to win statewide? Do they want to win statewide? What's it going to take for Republicans to win statewide? What's the magic formula, Governor Pawlenty? Do you want to go first? Or?
Okay, well, yeah, first of all, good morning, and thank you for being here. I want to applaud the Star Tribune for convening this group. Minnesota's comparative advantage, America's comparative advantage is ideas and innovation and the clash and competition of ideas and innovation, and I think this group gathers in that spirit, and it's a wonderful gathering for that purpose. So thanks for the Star Tribune for hosting this and convening this group. And on a similar note, a similar vein, we need the clash of ideas in politics, in the political arena. And if you have a monopoly of one party or the other, whether it be at a city or a state level, that's perhaps suboptimal, to say the least, when it comes to the competition you'd have for political ideas and political innovation. As to the future of the Republican Party of Minnesota, as Rochelle has alluded to, we haven't won in a long time statewide. It's different for obvious reasons at the congressional level or the legislative level, because those are political microclimates, and they get managed at the local level through redistricting and various other ways that don't necessarily reflect what's going to happen statewide, and our legislators can talk about what the maps look forward, project forward in that regard. But as to statewide races, it's true that Minnesota is at least a light blue state, if not a blue state, and the Republicans have been at a structural disadvantage politically in terms of the political demographic of the state for a few decades at least. And that doesn't mean we can't win from time to time, and doesn't mean we can't win in the future, but we start with a uphill climb in the forms of having to come over at least a 2 to 4 point demographic disadvantage. Now, it can happen, and it does happen. Nothing is inevitable, and things change. We were talking in the green room. If I would have told you 20 years ago or less that the Iron Range would soon be mostly Republican, you would have thought I lost my mind. Conversely, if I would have told you that Edina would soon be Democrat, you would have thought I lost my mind. so these trends and demographics shift and change over time. It's also true if you look at John F. Kennedy, for example, a pro-life, pro-gun, military interventionist, tax-cutting Democrat. He would never get endorsed by the Democratic Party of today. And similarly, Ronald Reagan, a pro-choice governor of California who raised taxes, president who signed a big amnesty immigration, and him as president, so don't get me wrong, it's not a criticism. I'm just trying to illustrate how these things shift over even just a few decades. So nothing stays the same as in life, as in politics, and I'm hopeful about the Republican Party's future, but it's going to have to grow market share. And so I'll stop with this. If you have a structural disadvantage, there aren't enough Republicans in the state of Minnesota to win statewide by just getting Republicans. That's different in places like Alabama or Georgia or Oklahoma. So here, the trick is you have to get some independents, more than your fair share of independents, and even some soft Democrats. And you got to have messages and candidates that resonate with that. The current measurement stick for Republican politics nationally and in Minnesota is mega politics. That has worked nationally, regardless of what you think about it. It has put the Republicans in a majority governing status at the president in the White House and the full Congress. But as applied to Minnesota, the political microclimate of Minnesota, it hasn't fully worked. And so you have President Trump having been on the ballot here 3 times and having lost 3 times. So part of the trick here is to have candidates that can satisfy the mega base, but also be able to attract independents and Democrats. And that's a tightrope walk for reasons we won't go into because we're short on time. But that's not something that's easy to do in today's Republican Party. But I think that's the way you can win statewide in Minnesota.
And I should point out that all 3 of these that both Senator Duckworth and Senator Coleman are constantly in the conversation in terms of running statewide at some point. Perhaps not in the next year, but although I did hear Senator Coleman, you were still thinking about it.
Well, the big problem is Senator Duckworth and I are still fighting about who gets that amazing LG spot. So until we solve that, neither of us.
Well, that's the woman's spot, so as you know. So
she's trying to get me in trouble.
But so what, can you talk a little bit about what would go into your thinking in terms of, I mean, is that fair to say that you 2 are both thinking about running statewide at some point?
Well, I think, one of the things, and I'll speak for myself and obviously let Julia weigh in too, but, part of what we look at are what conditions exist in the state of Minnesota, and there's a lot of talk that occurs regarding the suburbs specifically. I happen to live in the suburbs. I represent a suburban district, the great city of Lakeville and some of the surrounding communities. And a lot of folks would tell you that sometimes that's where the battle will be won or lost statewide in the metro. We know that greater Minnesota typically has become redder and redder. We know that Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the inner suburbs have become bluer and bluer, and so that the suburban ring is the purple battleground, so to speak. And to what former Governor Pawlenty said earlier, the trick is, as a candidate, you have to find a way to solidify your most ardent grassroots supporter, your base, let them know where you stand, that you're conservative enough, while also during that process not losing your ability to appeal to your more moderate, independent, or even winnable Democrats, so to speak. And that's the trick. Maybe it used to be that you could pivot once you secured that endorsement or won that primary, but that's becoming increasingly more difficult to do, or so it would seem. And a lot of that has to probably do with the way things are covered and videos that are captured and shared on social media more so than maybe they were in the past. But that really is the challenge right now, is finding somebody that can truly be authentic, sincere, and genuine in their principles and their values to solidify conservatives of the Republican Party and then compete statewide with the folks they need to as well.
That would be tough.
I hear you.
It's a number of factors, too. Both Zach and I have very little kids, and so that's something to think about as well. It was the big reason at the end of the day I said no to the U.S. Senate, because I struggle being in St. Paul a couple days a week and missing out on soccer games and bedtime stories and stuff like that. I'm a big fan of Esther and being for such a time as this, and I think every candidate has to look at the moment and go, where am I needed most? Where am I supposed to be right now? And so that's a big factor. Looking at the bigger picture, though, it definitely is, to both of their points, Minnesota has a big independent streak. I mean, you just look at some of the people we've elected and kind of how the polls go and shift and form. And so we need somebody, again, that can be authentically themselves. There's a reason that both Senator Duckworth and I outperform the president quite a bit in our district. It's because we're not trying to be Donald Trump. We're just trying to be ourselves, and ourselves want our kids to go to school and get a good education. We want to be able to afford the homes that we live in and have a grocery bill that's manageable. We want clean water. We want growing infrastructure and roads that don't have so many potholes my motorcycle's going to tip over. We have so many things that we want to go talk to people about that aren't the spicy issues that I think will help a candidate resonate statewide. However, you know, I was recently speaking to Ryan Faircloth about the assassinations that we've seen going on and what can we take a page out of. So I worked with Speaker Hortman on a couple of issues. Boy, does that woman know how to coalition build. And the Republican Party needs to learn that. I would rather have a party filled with people I agree with 70% of the time than govern with people I agree with 15% of the time. And we really need to open up that tent. Truly open up that tent. And when you go to a convention, sometimes it can feel like you're under immense scrutiny or immense attack, and you bring new people in, and it should feel like you're going to church. I am so glad you're here. Thank you for coming. How can I get you involved? So it needs to be a more welcoming party to grow, first and foremost. After we do that, we can maybe have the luxury of infighting, but until we get a statewide race again, we don't have that. Also so my first boss was Charlie Kirk, and I've been trying to take a page. What is a lesson I can learn from all these people that whether I agreed with them or not, I admired them. And from Charlie, it was Republicans have to stop saying college campuses are off limits. There's no chance of us making inroads there. There's no chance of us grabbing those younger generations that are now moving out into the suburbs and having families, but they haven't heard from the party since they were 18 years old and in college. We have to start actually talking to young people where they're at, much like Charlie did. So I think it's a multifaceted, big issue, but not one that's completely insurmountable.
Do you feel like there's buy-in for that position in the party right now, or, I mean, is there for broadening the tent, or, I mean, we're looking at we're looking at the U.S. Senate race next year, and we don't have a really big name in the race, a sort of mainstream candidate. Probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but you don't have a mainstream big name candidate in the Senate race.
I think it's personal responsibility. I was talking to somebody else about this last week on a podcast. If I'm not bringing 30 people in to caucus night that want to see somebody who isn't afraid to work across the aisle, who wants to get things done, who doesn't think compromise is a dirty word, who wants to broaden the tent, then aren't I part of the problem if all I do is go pander to whoever shows up? If there's somebody that hasn't come out to caucus since the good old days of the other Senator Coleman and Governor Pawlenty because they think the party's leaving them, well, damn it, roll up your sleeves, spend 2 Saturdays helping us take the party back then. And so it is the personal responsibility of we need to bring our own people out to decide who these candidates are, decide who should be in the party, all of that fun stuff.
Wow.
More than just 2 Saturdays.
Right.
There's also a Tuesday involved, yeah.
Well, what about, I mean, how do you balance, how do you manage to pivot? How can you pivot then? I mean, if going from trying to get the endorsement, I mean, Governor Pawlenty, it's no secret you were wooed for the U.S. Senate race, the coming one. It doesn't, sounds like as of now you're not interested, that you don't think you would get through the endorsement process or win a primary.
Right.
So personal responsibility. Couldn't you bring enough fans to the caucus, or?
Well, you summarized it well. As applied to me in the Senate race, it's something I would consider, except I can't get endorsed or win a primary in my own party. So that's part of the problem. But beyond that, I wanted to add one other thing regarding Republicans' fortunes in the future. If you look at the history of Republicans winning in statewide races in Minnesota, governor's races as an example, they often get help through unforced errors from the other side. And so this is more than just what are the Republicans doing and who are they nominating. It's also what are the Democrats doing and who are they nominating, or the other parties too. So let's look at 1978 when Al Quie beat Rudy Perpich. Rudy Perpich was involved in appointing Wendy Anderson to the Senate in a way that became very toxic for Rudy Perpich. And then, of course, the economy had cratered as well. So when you have a bad economy and a bad stumble by a governor, that sets up some opportunity to help overcome that structural advantage that I talked about earlier. Some of you may be old enough to remember 1990 when Arnie Carlson beat, guess who? Rudy Perpich. Because Rudy Perpich didn't have the self-awareness to realize that his shelf life had sort of expired, or his use-by date had expired, and he wanted to keep running. And people by then many had dubbed him Governor Goofy. And so, he was sort of baked by that point, but he insisted on running. So the Republicans got an assist, even if it's just incremental, can win under those circumstances. So we don't know a year from now what the macro environment's going to look like relative to Trump, relative to the economy. I can tell you, without going into all the details, Governor Walz he'll be here later today, but his numbers are softer than they used to be, which sort of creates a window or a band of opportunity for Republicans if they nominate at least a serviceable candidate. And candidates get better over the course of campaigns. They get practice and rehearse. As long as they don't say something really stupid, they tend to get better over time. And so I think it's going to be a competitive race, and that could reset the Republican Party in Minnesota if you had a governor who could help lead and articulate a vision for the future.
Does having a you won twice with a third-party candidate. Do you think you would have won without the third-party candidate?
Well, you and I talked about this in the green room, but this is boring history, and we're supposed to be talking about looking forward. But
well, sorry. If you want to ask the questions.
2002, I won with 45 or 46% of the vote. Then Senate Majority Leader Roger Moe. By the way, different era of civility. We had a debate a few weeks before, and we were beating the crap out of each other on television and TV ads, and we were up in a debate in Bemidji, and I flew and he drove, so I invited him to fly back with me, and we drank beer the whole way on the plane, 2 or 3 weeks before the election, only to get into a thunderstorm. There's no bathroom on the plane, and we had some issues there. But it was a great conversation. Great conversation till the end. But anyhow, I digress. So I won with 45. Roger had 35. Penny had something like 15. So I told Rochelle, Penny was center left, although, I think, so if you allocated 2/3 of his vote to Roger, that would have put him at 45. If you would give me 1/3 of his votes, it would have put me at, something in high 40. So I think I still would have won, but it would have been much closer.
And so the factors for hope for next year, if you want to look to the future.
Thank God you finally get into the topic.
I mean, are you confident in the field right now that they can mount a serviceable challenge to Walz?
I think that remains to be seen. I think to what Governor Pawlenty has shared, when you talk about the conditions being set, I think the stage sort of is set for a strong Republican candidate to succeed statewide. I think one of the interesting things about Minnesota in particular is we have a lot of folks that will split ticket vote. They don't necessarily go in to vote red or blue. I'll have people show up on election day, they'll vote for Angie Craig and then they'll vote for me, or make up your mixture. And so when you have folks in the state right now who are worried about rampant fraud going on to the tune of maybe over $1 billion across the state, and we're still finding more, when they've got public safety concerns, when they see what's happening in our public schools and the decline of academic performance and enrollment, and when they see the cost of living and their taxes increasing, their property taxes, their different forms of insurance, when they had a $10 billion tax increase, despite the government having a $20 billion surplus and spending all of it, I think there's a real opportunity for a strong candidate to capitalize on that, especially a lot of your free-thinking, independent, moderate voters who aren't necessarily worried about voting about a party, but are looking for someone who can actually govern responsibly. And that's really what it comes down to. Our state is at a precipice right now where if we don't begin to experience some responsible governing, there are some holes that we're going to be unable to dig ourselves out of. And that's why, to what was the point that was made earlier, you need strong parties, at least 2 of them, in any state to have good, responsible governing. Because if either party gets their way, most recently we've seen they kind of steamroll and just pass things that maybe aren't vetted to the extent they should be. And in my opinion, that's not responsible governing. And the people of Minnesota deserve a government that's going to be responsible and accountable to them.
Senator Coleman, your thoughts on?
Ditto. He summarized it so perfectly.
I mean, is it enough? Is it enough for Republicans to be on a check on the governor's office with your stronger position in the legislature? I mean, control the House now,
Right.
and it looks like you're going to end up very evenly split again in the Senate. Is that enough of a check, or do you need?
Well, clearly it hasn't been.
Yeah, I'll give you just my very personal opinion. I'm a small business guy. I have a couple small businesses, and how you run them, especially the executive leadership, is extremely important. One of the reasons why it might be beneficial to see a turnover in the governor's position is for an executive to really look at all of our government agencies and departments. Clearly, we've got some issues. They aren't running the best, and they're great people. I love our state employees and our workers. They're Minnesotans. They're trying to do their best. But we need somebody who's going to hold these departments and agencies accountable and work with commissioners that are going to say, not only have we identified fraud, what are we doing to actually stop it, prevent it, and be more on top of it, so to speak. Every week we're discovering another issue with state government, and we're talking about real people's livelihoods, their dollars being sent to fraudulent places all across the state, the country, outside our country. And that's a significant issue that if we don't get somebody in there right now to sort of turn the apple cart, so to speak, then we're just going to get more of the same, it would seem.
But then why aren't we seeing a bigger field of Republicans running for governor next year? I mean, it seems like there's decent conditions, and we broke it down in the green room in terms of numbers. It looks like it's pretty even right now. Why aren't we seeing more candidates?
I think we're going to see more, is my just listening to the buzz. I'm not going to name names, but I think we have a couple more coming out of the woodwork. So I do think the field is going to get bigger. I think that gives a candidate the ability to not necessarily have to go extraordinarily hard to the base, because that's going to be detrimental when we go to November. But then when you talk about leading the agencies, you know, when we talk about the future of the Republican Party, I'd love to get your opinion on this, is say the dog catches the mail cart and we elect a Republican governor, and we haven't had one in decades. Who are we filling these agencies with? Are we taking half of the Republican legislature and filling these agencies? I mean, that's one of the things that gubernatorial candidates will have to keep in mind, is if we want efficient agencies, they have to start kind of thinking of names for people in the cabinets now, without, you know, all the talent went to other states. So we would have to pick from the legislature itself. Where are these people coming from?
Well, you managed to do it when you were governor.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Senator. And I think, you know, most campaigns, if they feel like they might win, they have a shadow or quiet transition committee that forms and start doing the thought work around who could, from the private sector, might be interested, who from the public sector might be interested, and eventually you put it together because you have to.
Right.
But that's a wonderful point about, it's not just the governor, it's who he or she is going to fill the team out with. I did want to say one other thing, if I might, Rochelle, just digressing back to the earlier point. On the governor's race, there's another variable that could be semi-unique here, which is Governor Walz's decision to run for an unprecedented third consecutive term. And there's going to be a certain percentage of Minnesotans, regardless of what they think of Governor Walz or his opponents, who just say in their mind, it's time for somebody new, regardless of the other politics, that it's time to give somebody else a turn. And even if that's as small as 1 or 3%, and early polling indicates it's at least that, in a tight race, that could be the margin of error. I mean, that could be the opportunity for Republicans to take the race. And the other thing to keep in mind is, again, I talked about macro factors earlier, but Governor Walz is going to have a lot of money. I mean, he has the ability to raise, directly and indirectly, a mountain of money. He talks about that frequently, so I'm not saying things he doesn't say himself. So that's going to be a relative advantage in terms of campaign spending.
Did I flat out ask you, Senator Coleman, if you ruled out running for governor next year? Because you
I think
said
you just
not.
did.
Well, you did. You said you're not interested in going to D.C., but you have joked about moving to St. Paul.
That was a request by my oldest son. My in-laws live near Summit Avenue, and I showed him the governor's mansion, and he went, "That's really close to Grandma and Papa." you should live there. Well, I said, well, I'd have to run for governor. Okay, do that. So, I never say no to an opportunity, but I also, when I was talking to Ryan, I said the completely non-political answer, which is very harsh, is my kids have had one rough summer. They started it off with a cop outside their home, and they couldn't figure out why mom was so scared one day in June and so sad. My kindergartner's very first day at Catholic school, he was on lockdown. And I just had another death threat last week. And so right now it is, I just want to keep them very unaware of what's going on in the world. And it's been done. When my father-in-law ran, Lori was very good about grabbing the paper off the front desk before the kids saw it, about we don't watch the news and we don't answer the phone unless Dad's home. But it can be done. But right now it's just, let's find a good groove for the kids, and then I can think about what I'm doing tomorrow.
Senator Coleman's father-in-law is former Senator Norm Coleman, FYI, for those.
Yes, so I have to be very careful when people advertise that Senator Coleman's coming to something, because if they expect Norm and I show up, there's this, disappointment.
What else?
Well, I think besides tactics, the Republicans also have to have a positive vision for the future of Minnesota and the future of the country. And so we can talk about money and, third terms and all these things. It's interesting. But if you want to go get an increased piece of the market, you got to go earn it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of voters want to hear about how are you going to address, well, all voters want to hear about how you're going to address their concerns. So example, in Minnesota, we have 50% of our children in schools proficient in reading, math, and science at grade level. 50% of our children aren't at grade level. And it's abysmal. And if you don't have a pathway for an education, you can't later connect to the private economy, and you get kicked to the curb in a big hurry as an adult. And so I hope the next set of candidates from Minnesota for the Republican Party will talk deeply and passionately about education reform. I also hope they'll talk about fraud, which has been mentioned. I also hope they'll talk about public safety. If you don't think that's on Minnesotans' minds, of course it is, and there's a better way forward on that as well. And I could go on, but the point is, we can't just say, they suck or they suck. We have to say, and more importantly, here's what we'll do better. Here's what we'll do differently. Here's a positive vision about Minnesota, and care, and not just be robots for, the script of today, because people need vision casters. Nothing stays the same. It always evolves. It always shifts, and leaders have to see around the corner, articulate a vision, and bring people with them.
Senator Duckworth, you think the party needs to do a better job talking about education. What do you think you should do? How should you talk about it in a way you think that would resonate?
Sure. So I'm a former school board member myself before I ever got tricked into running for state senate. I've got 4 little kids. They all go to school in Lakeville. I'm a product of Lakeville schools myself, and so is my wife. So I'm very passionate about our public schools. And I think when you get into political discourse and debate, one party in particular has done a really good job painting Republicans as not being supportive of our public schools or public education or teachers, which could not be further from the truth. I always tell folks, we want nothing more than to see our public schools succeed, because if our public schools are succeeding, it means our kids are succeeding, our teachers are fulfilled, and we are setting conditions for a bright and successful future. That's really what it matters. At the state capitol, really what it's become about, the discussion is about academics. Are we going to focus on and set the conditions for the academic success of our kids, or are we going to allow for the classroom and what goes on in our schools to become a little bit more politicized? And we can get into and have that debate, and we can spar a little bit. But unfortunately, sometimes our vision, it's hard to get folks excited about, because it has less to do with emotion and sometimes more to do with results. Our vision for our public schools are schools in which our kids are succeeding at a high level academically. They're safe. They've got a lot of opportunity. Graduation rates are high, and they're going on to do whatever it is they want to do post-graduation, whether that means higher education or going into the workforce, you name it. And so there may be other initiatives that pull at heartstrings a little bit more, or do a little bit better of a job of enticing voters or getting to think that you support public schools more than the other party. But that's what we have to do. And they try to say that we don't want to fund our public schools. Well, that's not the case. The last time that we had an impasse and didn't figure out what to do with what we had at the time, a $10 billion surplus, it was our party that was saying we want to give our public schools $1 billion, but we want to give it to them without strings attached. We want it to go to the general education formula or the special education cross subsidy. Not all these mandates are actually going to force districts into deficit, which is what we saw, because they're requiring them to spend way more money than the state's actually giving them on things that those districts don't even necessarily want to or need to invest in. If you asked every district right now across the state, what are your needs, they're going to give you different answers. And what they want is the funding and the freedom and the autonomy to utilize it in the way they need to, their community would like them to do it, rather than the state mandating how they do it. And so that's part of the problem is, how do we ensure that our governing, our vision also includes that aspect of local control and respecting various communities, their needs, and what they would like to achieve or see for their kids, specifically when it comes to their public schools. And I think that's going to be, I think, Governor Pawlenty is 100% correct to key in on education, because originally, don't hold this against me, originally I'm from the great state of Iowa, okay? I did go to middle school and high school and college here in Minnesota. But there was a time when, and I still feel this way, but the metrics don't necessarily support it, when Minnesota schools were the cream of the crop. Every other state in the country desired and were envious of our public schools, their performance. And right now, when you stack up, especially literacy rates, performance on math and things of that nature with other states across the country, they don't look as good as they used to. That's a tough pill for us to swallow. It's tough to admit. But that's why we have to roll up our sleeves, put politics aside, keep them out of the classroom, and focus on the academic success and excellence of our kids.
Well, so then is it a matter of better messaging, or is it better candidates? Or
You should just listen to my messaging. No,
I mean, that's a hard case. How do you make that case to people in the 60 seconds or the amount of time you've got at the door, or however you're going to make it? I mean, is it messaging or is it candidates, and how do you get over that hurdle?
I think it's a combination. First and foremost, you have to be consistent about your messaging. And what happens is everybody wants to take you in a different direction, especially when it comes to education, right? We're talking about...
What do you mean by everybody wants to take you in a different direction?
Well, I should say when you get into a political debate or discussion, folks want to pivot and take you to a different direction. They want to talk about banning books. They want to talk about...
When you talk about folks, are you talking about like at a party meeting? Are you talking about bigger picture?
Well, your question was how do you succeed with your messaging?
Okay.
So while you're trying to project your messaging, folks that may not want you to be successful want to take away or confuse from that messaging and swing in a different direction, if that makes sense.
So you need to stay on message.
You need to stay on message and not be distracted by folks that want to take you in a different direction and have you talk about other things, rather than focusing on the future or the problems that we should be identifying or addressing, specifically when it comes to education, or pick your topic.
Okay, so staying on message better.
Well, but your message also has to be a good one. It does you no good to stay on message if your message is kind of crappy, right? So you have to identify a great message that speaks to voters, that understands where they are right now with their kids in their classrooms and what they're experiencing, and then stay on that and convince people that that's the direction to go.
And is this a matter of having a transformational candidate at the top of the ticket that everybody follows, or does this come from the ground up, or some combination, or within?
Sure. Well, I'm doing a lot of talking, so I'll stop. But I certainly think that helps. You have to have a dynamic, at least in this state, in order to succeed, I think, as a Republican. You have to have good personable skills. You have to be dynamic enough to not only sell that vision, but to communicate it in a way that gets people excited and optimistic about the future and voting for you. We had somebody do it a little while ago, and that's kind of what we need to return to.
You talking about him?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, I mean, not to tell tales out of school, but at the end of the day in these campaigns, what happens is there's a whole bunch of people who are going to vote Republican no matter what. There's a whole bunch of people who vote Democrat no matter what. Doesn't matter who the candidates are. Almost doesn't matter what the commercials are. They vote robotically, red or blue.
And it's close. Explain the percentage a little bit. It's close. It's what were you saying? 42, 44.
Yeah, in the end, at the end. But then you have the independents who decide the election, and the ticket splitters, as we talked about. And so, the pollsters will slice and dice who those people are, how they think, what makes them vote. They'll stack rank the issues 1 to 10 on what's the most vote motivating issues for independents. and then they'll tell you to go talk about those 3 issues all day long, every day, as passionately as you can. And the sweet spot is if one of those 3 or 4 issues also drives turnout with your base. So you get a twofer. So, you know, the duality of these things is you have to drive the turnout, because relative turnout, incremental turnout for the blue team or the red team can decide the election. So each side has to make sure their base is motivated and passionate and excited to donate and get out and vote. Okay, but then you got to get your slice in more of the independents. And if you find an issue, let's say, for example, it's crime, that both is base motivating for Republicans and appealing to suburban voters, you are all over that like a rat on a Cheeto. So, I mean, you're like, well, why is all he's doing is talk about crime every day? It's because in October and September, after you've already got all the other people accounted for, you're trying to get that last slice of the independents. You know, you got data that shows that's the vote driving issue for 2/3 of the independents. I don't know what it'll be next fall, but it'll be something like that.
So if I may add, with our remaining time, we need to get more women into this party. We desperately need to get more women into this party, particularly young women. When I got elected, I was the youngest woman ever elected to the state senate on both sides. I remained the youngest Republican woman in the legislature years later. We need to start getting moms that are walking in the shoes of working mothers. Prior to my getting there, people didn't know in the state of Minnesota that you can go take a smoke break and not get docked pay, but if you go pump, you're docked pay. People didn't know that there's lead and arsenic in feminine hygiene products. People didn't know a whole host of issues that we've brought forth. Our party brought forth the paid family leave proposal in the Senate, a free market paid family leave proposal to cover the gaps in the system. And so if we don't start getting more of those voices in, I don't see the future of the Republican Party. So if there's any young women out there that are listening and saying it might be too much, it might be the wrong time, I was 9 months pregnant when my state senator retired. It is never the right time. But
With
just
the
you gotta
twins
do
or
it.
the other?
Oh, I started and ended the race pregnant. I was 9 months pregnant. I announced I was running. I had my baby. A year later, I won and found out I was having twins. So if I can do it, you can do it too.
And you're not the only one. Others had young children and had babies in office. So that's I guess we'll close on that pitch for more women to run for office.
Yes.
Sorry, guys.
Thank you.
So that was Star Tribune had a little summit or whatever. They did also have Governor Walz, JB Pritzker. I didn't really want to watch that because I know a lot of it. They asked Walz about how he felt about National Guard potentially being called into Minnesota. To me, I think that's a lot of fear mongering, not only just on the Democrat side, but also the Republicans. And I don't, listening to this, this is the first time that I watched it. At least I watched half of it this morning or whatever. But it really does make me wonder, like, where is the Republican Party, going in Minnesota? And I really do feel like there's a big voter pack out there that is disenfranchised, because there's some things that I agree with the Democrats, and there's some things that I agree when it comes to the Republican Party. But I really do feel like we have to draw a line in the sand. If we're going to sit here and be a legislator, who are we being a legislator for? That's what I really, really want people to know. Like, what are you running for? What are you, doing? Are you really working for the people? Or are you working for a corporation? And Julia Coleman I think she hit really good on her spot when she said that, if you want to run for election, bring your people to the caucus. Bring the people that support you to the caucus so that you can advance. And I do feel like we leave a lot of people voices out. I think it was, I know this is probably like 35, 40-minute thing between them yesterday on the Star Tribune. But I feel like a big percentage of Republicans, I won't even say Republicans, I'll say people that look at politics, or not even just politics. It's their everyday life, as it's conservative to them. And a lot of people don't honestly want to look at that, but that's what it really comes down to. We got to think about how we were raised. I'm not saying that it was the best. I'm not saying that uh, it was a great time, because it wasn't. We still had our issues, but they weren't at the front of the door like they are now. And I don't well, yes, I do. Uh, People, we want reparations so bad in America, that churches or nonprofits, that's what we're seeing. And then the crazy thing, we're seeing a large majority of the money being spent overseas. That's not America first. How can we as how can we as people, because even I was listening to they had a press conference yesterday about housing vouchers in Minneapolis. I'm going to play that a little bit later, a little bit. Uh, but it's like, damn. And then even you, here's the crazy thing for me, right? Is maybe people don't know, but people should know. The Title IX um, in Minnesota, they found it to be illegal, to be that it was unconstitutional, that we are allowing boys who were born boys playing girl sports. Uh, I do feel like we need to have a conversation, and I'm going to be by Friday. I'll be talking more about this. I know that it's Wednesday, um, but because Friday is the deadline, so I'm going to talk a little bit about it today, but also on Friday, because I don't think people really fully understand what this means. And right now, I think it's last night when I watched the report, they were at, I think, like 141 school board members in Minnesota, and I think it was like from 41 districts. And I'm like, do people do not understand how big this is? Do not understand what this could mean for a lot of schools, especially, I will say this, Champlain Park, where Marissa, which used to be Charlie Dean, should Marissa, what they like to call themselves, um, which we've allowed for the kids to change their genders, and we got rid of uh, therapists or psychiatrists. I shouldn't even say psychiatrists, therapists, that they couldn't talk about gender dysphoria or the things they were feeling inside of them, because we didn't care about their emotions or what they're going through. We just said, okay, come, yeah, come on. We'll get you some boobs. We'll make you let testosterone, and it's like, dude, it's no matter. Here's the thing of it is that I really, really want, because somebody asked me the other day, right? Well, if you were dating a trans woman, do you consider yourself gay? And I was like, what the? Okay, they can cosplay. They could be a woman, but they still can't take the third leg away. So is that a woman? Because where I was born and how I was raised is that women could have babies. Women had natural breasts, natural punani's, not some old made up shit. And that's why I kind of feel like a lot of this shit that we live in today has us like no, I won't even say that. I almost came out. But like Frankenstein. How is this not made up in some kind of laboratory, surgical environment? And then we see it. I mean, we've came to the point where literally they're in medical, whatever you want to call it, is that they can do an innie into an outie. And it's like, what does that even mean? I know we were all born with innies or outies when it came to our belly buttons. But they literally have surgery to turn your penis into a vagina. That's not for everybody. But if you can't say that you want to be a woman Doesn't matter if you put boobs, you're still a chick with a dick. That's it. You're not a woman. You're a chick with a dick. If that's what you want to be, let's be honest, because how we were raised, how we were born, even when it came down to gender, we were told boys had penises, girls had vaginas. Two genders, male and female. It's not that way anymore. Think my 72 or some shit. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, you're not doing anything but confusing people. Like, if we're sitting here and, everybody's like, well, listen to the science, listen to the science. Come on, man. That's not listening to the science, because what you're telling me is that science has changed over years. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with progressing. But I'm not okay with the way that we do it, because I feel like we don't education is not at forefront anymore when it comes to public schools. I mean, let's be honest. This is not your public schools in the 80s, the 90s, or even, I'll even say the 2000s. But as soon as we hit, I would say about like 2010 and above, it's been a hellhole. Let's keep it real, because we're making sure that, not that they're educated and that they can read at their grade level, but we passed legislation, no child left behind, no matter if they missed half the semester and didn't even got nowhere near an A. It was just D's and F's. They're still graduating them. They're still moving them on. That's not no child left behind. Because we've seen it as, oh, them are ignorant, them are bad. No, it shouldn't have never been seen like that. It should have been seen as they need some extra help. They need a little extra help. Because how are we as parents, or even as teachers, or anything that comes to education, that we don't want kids that actually be reading at their grade level? There's not going to be any teacher out here that says, no, I don't want my kids like that. Because they do. But because we have so much repercussions when people speak how they really feel, no matter if it comes to the teachers, no matter if it comes to superintendents, school board members, to me, it's not even about the kids anymore. Everything is about politics. Everything. We just can't sit here and teach normal shit. And I don't even know what normal is any fucking more. I'm going to be honest. I don't. I think we are so past what normal actually is than what it should be. And I think that's because we became desensitized. It wasn't matter if it was the war. Didn't matter if it was about death. Didn't matter if it came to homeless people. Because what are we seeing? Everything at an all-time high. And they always want to put out crime is going down, blah. No, it's not. You guys just have figured out other ways to hide it. Let's be honest here. It's not about eradicating violence. Because what happened last night, right across from the Hennepin County Jail, there was a shooting. A man was killed right by the doors where you come in at booking. Right at them doors. And it's like, damn, we can't do shit. If people think that, I really want people to look at, right? Because the same way in Rochester, there used to be a liquor store called Buckeye Liquor on 4th Street, right across from the jail, in the courthouse, and where the police station was at. But that was the most robbed liquor store, any kind of store in Rochester at that time, even though it was a hop, skip, and a jump away from the prison, or not the prison, but the jail, and where the police are at. And they still couldn't protect it. They still couldn't protect it. So I really, really want people to think about that. So I'm going to get into about these school board members, and they're pushing for compliance on federal trans athlete policy.
The clock is ticking on the deadline. Federal officials have given Minnesota agencies to comply with its transgender athlete policy and Title IX.
And now we've got a coalition of more than 100 school board members urging the state's education department and the high school league to follow federal guidelines and block transgender athletes from competing in girls' sports. Our So Young Kim is in our newsroom tonight, and so you spoke with one of the coalition's organizers here. So what's their reasons for sending out this letter? Tell us about it.
The school board members who signed the letter say they're concerned over the potential loss of federal funding and the safety of student athletes.
Both emailed and sent to Governor Walz, to Attorney General Keith Ellison, also the two leaders for MSHSL. I'm really hoping that the state pays attention and that MSHSL changes their policies.
That letter, urging Minnesota leaders to comply with federal transgender athlete policy, was signed by a coalition of school board members who serve more than 40 districts across the state.
How are we protecting all students in our district? So whether it's in the locker rooms or on the playing field.
This comes after the U.S. Departments of Education and Health and Human Services sent the state's education department and league a notice last week saying Minnesota was in violation of Title IX by allowing transgender athletes to compete in female sports. The federal notice gave the state agencies 10 days to resolve the issue or risk enforcement action.
As school districts, we cannot risk the loss of funding. It's really that important to us. This is an opportunity for our state to figure out a way to put in policies that really protect all students.
In response to the coalition's letter, Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison sent this statement that reads in part, quote, "Exclusion is a violation of the Minnesota Human Rights Act, which has protected the rights of trans kids to participate in all extracurricular activities for decades. I, too, am concerned about the Trump administration's threats to cut education funding for kids across Minnesota. But this matter is before the court right now." And according to when the federal violation notice was dated, Friday would be the deadline to comply. Live in the newsroom tonight, So Young.
So you're really going to have, I mean, in my eyes, I think you're going to have a power play. We do, in my eyes, we have the right administration. I don't know. I know it's in federal court right now, the Title IX shit. I know they have until Friday to comply. I don't know if they will or I don't know if they won't. I know some federal funding is being denied. It's being canceled. So to be honest, this is going to be a really, really wild election cycle, even when it comes to we're less than 30 days in Minneapolis for mayor and council. 26, it'll be governor and some, Senate and House. So we really will have a lot at stake. We really will have a lot at stake in Minnesota. And are we going to, as people, make a difference? And I sit here so before I get into anything else, because I want to, the Science Journal came out with a little quiz, whatever, that you could pick who the mayor was, right? So, but this isn't all the candidates. They have Brenda Short in Minneapolis. They have Omar Fatah. I think the middle dude is some choir or whatever. Then there's Jazz Hampton, Dwayne Davis, and Mayor Frey. But I don't see Laverne on there. So are we getting, I feel like they're sticking certain people down people's throats. Because if you don't, here's the one thing that I will say is that certain candidates in Minneapolis are being censored. I don't know why, but it'll really, really be hard in these last little 28 days to get an independent but I think we're going to have that opportunity because there will be a shakeup. And then when you see that shakeup happen in Minneapolis and maybe even St. Paul, because this is the first time in history that 3 candidates are known DSA members. Because not only in Minnesota, and you got Minneapolis and St. Paul, but you also have New York. That is, I want people to really, really know, because what are we always, at least I've said this for at least last 3 or 4 years, is that elections have consequences. Elections have consequences, and they do. If we don't be informed, if we don't be level-headed and get out of policies that are emotional, and let's get to more of that policies from that education we got, no matter if it's self-taught, no matter if it's from schools. But I do feel like, and I don't know about the compromising shit anymore, because I honestly do believe, like, how can you compromise with people that are so far apart? That are so far apart. And I know a lot of people, like, especially when it comes down to, they say that they're not religious, but they go by the 10 Commandments. Okay, I agree with that. I agree with that. We should not steal from thy neighbors. We should not kill thy neighbors. We should not commit adultery. Yeah, I really do believe in all that. But is that what we see? No matter if it came to Charlie Kirk, because I know, and here's the one thing that I don't get out of the Republicans, right? Is Charlie Kirk used to go on to, and he was killed on a college campus, but try to get voters or have dialogue with people that, to be honest, are not politically educated. I mean, let's be serious. Let's be honest. They don't know. I mean, especially when it comes to our Gen Z, because all they want to see is furries, or, you know, that family values has really gone downhill. So when we see this young generation, we're not seeing people that are want to be mothers or want to be married, and what we see as a village. As we see as a village, because I really want people to see this. It's not about us. These are candidates that are literally not for the people. I'm going to be honest. Besides Brenda Short, but Omar Fattah, that's not an America first. That's not a Minneapolis first. Tom Emmer. You know, we have to remember that it wasn't just the Democrats that allowed this shithole to happen, because it was also the Republicans, you know. And just like the conversation I had yesterday, it was like, people have to stop remembering, you know, we got to get rid of that short-term memory loss shit and start to think about, hey, Tom Emmer he's included in this shit. Because, and to be honest, even when I look at the legislator in Minnesota and how we're at right now in 2025, a lot of that shit could have been stopped in 23 and 24. But because no matter if it came, I will say this, the Democrats didn't give a fuck. But even when you went to Republicans, and I have the same thing with Robert Johnson. That's why I like Phil Parrish. That's like, I'm going to be honest. And even the conversation that I had yesterday, I was talking to a Phil Parrish supporter. I didn't know that. I thought it was going to be a Jensen or maybe Brad or whatever, but no. And then he told me why he wanted Phil. And I was like, damn, that's exactly the same reason. Because I know Robbins. No, this is the whole thing that a lot of people don't know. The bitch sold out so that Lisa DeMuth could be speaker. Let's be honest. The Republican Party that is in Senate right now, besides a couple, they don't give a fuck about us. It's about them getting paper. It's about them. They care more about the money than they care about the power. They care more. And see, the Democrats, they're getting the money and the power. They're getting the money and the power. But Republicans in Minnesota, this is the one thing that I really, really had took away from the conversation I had yesterday, and even watching this little mayor and the Republican shit in Minneapolis and Minnesota. And it's like, no wonder why we're like this. No wonder. Because the minute you start talking about something and they don't like the words that are coming out your mouth, they shut you out. They shut you out. That's why so many people in Minnesota have their own tables. Because they're tired of trying to join the tables. And those people don't listen. Because they have their $100,000 CEOs to come talk about a life that they don't know anymore. That they don't know anymore. And I will say this, is that a lot of people will say, whatever. I want y'all to know is that Jesus was killed by his own people. By his own people. So don't be amused. Don't be surprised. Not amused, but don't be surprised when betrayal happens. Because if Jesus was betrayed by his own fucking people, we need more David versus Goliath stories. We need to see the little man do more than the big guy. And we can. There's more people that, in my eyes, that really don't. They might be in a party, no matter if it's Democrats, DSA, Action for Liberty, Republicans. There's some of them that are not like the establishment. And I'm going to be honest, and I won't be the only one that says this. You cannot win with the mega wordage in Minnesota. It's not going to work. The same way in New York, the same way in Chicago. Because you know why? They're predominantly Black areas. Come on, let's be honest. That's why a lot of Republicans, the crazy thing is, I'll try to find it after this, but there's a, did I watch that? I think I did. Yeah. But that's one thing that I wanted to talk about, because even the Republicans in Minneapolis, look at who they're endorsing. Look who they're talking about. They're talking about Jacob Frey. They're not talking about, okay, we need to go talk about about Laverne Turner. They're not doing none of that. Because there's so much here. I'm going to be honest. There's so many egos are I people, then instead of us trying to come together and do what's better. That's why it works for the Democrats, is because even though we don't see eye to eye on a lot of shit, we're not going to get behind each other, because automatically they might say something that we don't like. But instead of just keeping quiet and talking about it behind closed doors, and I really feel like the DFL does, because there's a lot of the fighting that you see, even when it comes to social media, is people inside the party. You have people being called rhinos. You have people being called Marxist. You have people being called militant. I don't hear nothing about a fucking Republican or a Democrat. We're sitting here, have all these other fucking labels. Why? I want people to think about this, right? And I'm going to show this about 15 minutes long, 16 minutes. But it's the cause to save Minneapolis emergency and housing vouchers. And I won't play a lot of it, but I will play a little bit.
Tasha Doctor. I'm a Minneapolis public school educator and a resident of East Isles here in Minneapolis. And today we are here gathered as community members to demand that we do not pit our unsheltered community members against each other, because that is not who we are as a city. And today we are specifically calling upon the council to do better than the mayor's budget and not let anyone out. And so I am going to first turn it over to another community member, Kristen.
Good morning. My name is Kristen Crabtree. I'm a parent in Minneapolis Public Schools and a resident of Ward 9 in Minneapolis. I want to, talk a little bit about my experience as a renter and a resident. My neighbors and I cope with the impacts of housing instability every day. We know that it takes a robust and multi-pronged approach to meet the needs of our community, and that Housing First is a data-backed best practice approach that's embraced by Hennepin County. We know that MPHA has encouraged the council to fully fund to fund Housing First and to include in that stable homes, stable schools, as well as emergency housing vouchers. And we know that these programs ought not be pitted against one another. These are our neighbors, and many of our neighbors experiencing unsheltered homelessness grew up in systems of trauma, experienced childhood trauma, experienced adverse events as children that led to their experience of unsheltered homelessness. So this is a cycle where each part impacts the other, and we know that we are stronger together. We know that we do better when we take care of each other and that we support one another. And that means both our families experiencing housing instability as well as our individual adults experiencing housing instability, because no one is actually an individual. We are all products of this community. We all have family members and neighbors in this community, and we show up for each other. And I want to just ground us in some facts. Over 2/3 of people who are homeless in Minnesota experienced trauma as a child, and there is an alarming overrepresentation of Black, African American, and Indigenous and Hispanic Latino people experiencing homelessness in the Twin Cities. That means that this is an issue of justice for access to housing, an issue of racial justice, and an issue of making sure that we provide the equity that we all know we deserve as a community. We deserve safe, healthy, and desirable neighborhoods, and that means looking out for every member of our community. Thank you. Yep, Kristen Crabtree, Christin, and Crabtree is Crabtree. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Hwang Murphy. I'm the CEO of People Serving People. And so People Serving People is the state's largest family homeless shelter, just a couple of blocks away, just right downtown. And, people might be wondering, why is People Serving People a family homeless shelter commenting on this? We are because families deserve better choices. Right now in this landscape, the reality is that there are impossible choices that people have to make. They have to choose between being on the street or engaging in survival behaviors in order to survive. We deserve better choices, and those choices start with the city. The city can make better choices too. One of those choices is showing families and showing children that we support them. Right now, this is an effort that pits community against each other. We shouldn't be doing that. We need the emergency vouchers, and we need stable homes, stable schools. We need both. If we say that we care about children, we also then need to show that we will care about the adults that they become. That is something that we can show now by not presenting this as an impossible choice, but one that we get to make, and one that the City Council and the Mayor has every authority to decide better. We have to fund both. We must fund both. And one of those necessary reasons is that we know the federal landscape is only going to get worse. Right now we have 200% capacity that we are overwhelmed right now with families experiencing homelessness. Removing those choices, removing those options from folks is only going to make that problem worse. And the terrible truth is that families can be hidden behind doors. And those doors are not safe. We must present families and our community with better choices. And so what I would just say to folks is that, folks just need more than bare minimum. We need to make sure that we ask for what we need, and we demand that, that we do what justice demands, not just what, the policy or what the budget might tolerate. We can do better, we must do better. Thank you. Yes, my name is Hwang Murphy. So spelling is Hoang Murphy. I'm the CEO of People Serving People. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Naomi Wilson. I am a parent of a child in Minneapolis Public Schools. I am a volunteer with people experiencing unsheltered homelessness, and I am an advocate for Housing First. In 2017, Mayor Jacob Fry promised that he would end homelessness in 5 years. Here we are in 2025. The mayor is running for a third term. Unsheltered homelessness in Minneapolis has increased. And rather than pursuing every possible avenue to end homelessness, the mayor is presenting us with a Sophie's choice, funding stable homes, stable schools at the expense of emergency housing vouchers. These programs can coexist. There is room in the budget for both programs. Former City Council member Cam Gordon compiled some data, and it's estimated that in between the years, in about a period of 3 years, from about 2021 to 2024, the city of Minneapolis spent between $5.5 and $7.5 million in clearing encampments. We can only expect that the mayor will continue to find money to clear encampments in his budget. But he can't be bothered to find emergency housing voucher money for my friends who are experiencing unsheltered homelessness. We can do better, Minneapolis. We can fully fund both programs, stable homes, stable schools, and emergency housing vouchers. And I am calling on the City Council to introduce budget amendments that will do both. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sean Layden. I'm here with the Service Employees International Union, Local 284. We represent hundreds of workers in the Minneapolis public schools who are hourly workers, who keep our buildings safe and clean, and who make nutritious meals so our kids are ready to learn. And as some of the lowest paid workers in a public institution, our members are familiar with what it is like to have the most powerless pitted against one another when it comes to public budgets. It is unacceptable. The stakes are too high. Now, with the federal government targeting cities like Minneapolis, Chicago, LA, those of us who believe that we take care of one another, now is not the time to pit these communities against each other. We can do better, and we expect, our members expect leaders in the city of Minneapolis to do better and to find those funds. Because when the powerful come knocking in places like city...
I'm going to stop it there. I just want to say, though, and to all of this, is that a lot of these people up here that are speaking make over $100,000 a year, I just want to say. So these are not people that are in our communities who are suffering. These are not people who are in our communities that feel trauma. These are people up here being performative than actually being on the ground, being boots on the ground, writing policies, writing ordinances. The same way in Rochester, we criminalize homelessness. And that's a policy that came from the police department. That's not a policy that came from everyday human beings in our streets. It was a paid occupation, a paid professional that came and wrote for Rochester, and they passed it. So I want people to honestly think about that, is to know that sometimes you vote as a consequence if you don't vote right. So, or at least uninformed. But after midnight last night in downtown Minneapolis, they had a shooting right across the street from the Hennepin County Jail. 3 people were shot, 1 died. And it's like, come on now. This is where people are supposed to be safe, supposed to feel. Yeah, I don't understand how we, right across from the jail, there was a big ass shooting, and the shooter still in my, I'll check, but I don't think the shooter has been caught.
Breaking news this morning out of downtown Minneapolis, a deadly shooting outside a bar just hours ago.
We know one man is dead and 3 other people are in the hospital, I should say. This happened just before midnight near South 4th Street and 4th Avenue South. That's right by the federal courthouse and a few blocks from U.S. Bank Stadium. Audrey Russo is live there this morning. And Audrey, authorities are still looking for the shooter.
That's right. The first calls came in just before midnight. So at this point, it's been hours that police have been looking for the suspect. Now, just in the last 5 minutes, police actually did clear the scene here in front of Bar Zia. They took all of the tape down and they left. But this is what we saw when our cameras first arrived on scene. Take a look at this video. We saw police laying down evidence tags and using canine crews to look around the block. The street is now open, but at that time it was taped off. Now they're looking for whoever's responsible for shooting and killing one man. That suspect also shot and injured a man along with 2 women. All 3 of those folks were brought to the hospital, and police tell us they are expected to be okay. Now, I looked into Bar Zia's social media, and based on their posts, there was a scheduled Tipsy Tuesday event running from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. Now, I reached out to police to see if that shooting was connected to the event, and this was a pretty hectic scene. I actually did see some social media videos of folks kind of streaming out into the street as police were first arriving on scene. Now, police tell us there's actually going to be more information that they release later on. They say more information is forthcoming. They don't have an exact timeline as to when, but we'll be sure to bring you those updates as soon as we get them. Back to you.
So, yeah, there hasn't been any update as of yet. But when I come back on tomorrow, I will give an update then of that shooting downtown, right across the street from the Hennepin County Jail. And I do think that is something that people should know. And I'm going to say it again. If you go out, just expect something. This is what I want people to know. Yes, it can happen anytime, any place. But the less you put yourself in danger, the less you put yourself at risk of those type of bad situations, it's better for all of us. We don't need this. The thing of it is, they want people to be killed. That's why they serve alcohol. That's why there's bars and strip clubs are big ass shit. There was just a shooting the other day at the strip club. Like, come on. I mean, I ain't gonna lie. At Rick's Cabaret, the wings are really fucking good. I'm not gonna lie. So that was in the same area, not even too far from each other. So it's like, when are we going to actually wake up and be solutions and not problems in our communities? That's what I really, really want people to sit here and ask themselves, right? Is how can we stop being problems and be solutions? Because I honestly do believe that there is a lot of us that know better and who want to do better. But because we have people up here that won't bite the hand that feeds them, this is the shit that we see. We see homelessness being criminalized. We see people fraudulently taking taxpayers' money. Because I'll say this, as much money has gone for programs in Minnesota to make sure that we get rid of homelessness, that we can get homeowners and with people with bad credit. That's not happening. You're not seeing that. What you're seeing is money being sent overseas. So if that money stayed here and what it went to what it was supposed to be for, our streets wouldn't be like this. Let's be honest. They would nowhere like this, right? Right. Oh yeah, I agree with you, Joe. I don't know. The comments aren't coming up here for some reason, but Joe said that crime is why Rochester's downtown is dead. Population reduction scheme. Yes. I mean, what people don't understand is that DMC from Mayo, they have this upward, some kind of fucking plan. But if people are not looking at that, Rochester will not be the same by 2030. You're going to see a lot. Downtown will not be the same. All the way up to 7th Street. Because I've talked to business owners who are taxed like they're in a downtown area, but they're not, because during the years, Rochester has expanded their downtown district. Go look up Rochester and look up how they've expanded their downtown district, because it goes all the way out to 7th. That's not downtown. That's nowhere. I mean, it's a few blocks, but it's not downtown Rochester. So look at Rochester's, look at Mayo Clinic's little plan for the future, and you see, look at that shit, and you tell me that a lot of things are not missing. A lot of, like, let's say churches, let's say businesses, housing. Again, they won't call it gentrification, but that's what it is. We have so much gentrification in Minnesota, and because we can't have conversations about it, open and honest, transparent, we get bullshit. We get bullshit, right? We get bullshit. I agree with you with the SEI union. Same thing with the sales tax. There's one, and I'll talk about this sales taxes tomorrow in these city budgets. But there's one county in Minnesota, and I just seen the number. I didn't see what city it was or anything like that, or even if it was a county. But there's one place in Minnesota that they are asking for a 30% increase when it comes to taxes. And it's like, damn, that's a lot. I mean, I can get the whole 1%, 2%, 5, 6, 7, maybe even 10, but 30, that's a lot when you already have energy and water prices going up. You have trailer parks home who are renting the lot rent, and that's what people don't want to talk about. You can't work a 9-to-5 job as a cashier clerk or at your fast food restaurant, because that pay doesn't take care of it all. You're going to be barely making it week to week and begging the government. Is that what we really want? Is to beg the government to help us out of a situation that they put us in? So I'm going to get up out of here. You already know what it is. Mr. Urban Conservative, Chaz Neal, and I will see y'all same time, same place tomorrow. And before I get up out of here, here is Shy Glizzy with G Herbo, athlete, and I will see y'all tomorrow.
GG's.